Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for hanging out with us here on the Daily Racing Form YouTube. It's time for our Kentucky Derby post position reaction, the draw. We'll give you some thoughts on where everybody's situated in the field of 20. But before we do, now that the field is set, you can go and get your Kentucky Derby packages. They are available. We have a couple different packages for you if you're going to play the races on Friday, Kentucky Oaks Day, or just Saturday, Kentucky Derby Day. So, David, now we know the field is set. We have 20 in the field. We have one also eligible. I think when it comes down to the post position draw, something that we're all kind of monitoring are where the top choices draw, right? The betting favorite, the horses that are going to take a lot of money. So I think a lot of eyes were on journalism and where he was going to end up. What'd you think about the number 8 post position draw for our favorite, who is installed at 3-1, lukewarm morning line favorite?
Yeah, I think sometimes we have a tendency to overanalyze these draws because there's so much anticipation being built up for the Kentucky Derby. And once you finally get the post draw done, it feels like the race is upon us. So everyone's curious to see where they're all going to land and how it's going to affect their potential trips. At least with journalism, Gino, I don't know if the draw mattered that much, but you do have to acknowledge 8 is a perfect post for him because if they want to get a slot in mid-pack, he's drawn outside of a lot of speed. He should have some space around him with some horses going forward, some going backwards. And he's just the kind of horse that has so many options. He can adapt to whatever kind of pace scenario they throw at him. So I wasn't too worried about the post position draw for him going into the race, but I think the connections, Michael McCarthy and Umberto Rispoli, they've got to be satisfied with number 8.
Yeah, I think Mark Casse was talking earlier in the week about how he would like if the system was changed and altered a little bit to where the horses at the top of the point system could pick their post positions. And I think if journalism and their connections were able to pick, they probably would have been right there somewhere in like that middle of the field, probably 8, 9, 10, right in that range. So I think they're pretty happy where they sit. I mentioned Mark Casse a minute ago. It looks like the horses that are going to be in the next tier, like the second and third choice, David, Sandman and Sovereignty, they're drawn right next door to each other, 17 and 18. Both of those horses are ones that want to come from the back of the pack. I think Sandman is more of like a deeper closer, probably wants to drop back out of it. Do you have any thoughts on the post position for those two?
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of interesting that you have this concentration of speed down towards the inside and a concentration of horses that are going to be going backwards towards the outside. And maybe that's ideal for some of those closers because they don't need to sort of jockey for position. They're going to have some space to look to their left and maybe slot in to save some ground from those wider post positions and maybe find their stride a little more. I don't know if I'd want to be breaking next to Sandman if I were any horse, Gino, because Sandman can be a little goofy coming out of the starting gate. Sometimes he goes to the right or the left, doesn't always have his feet underneath of him. So we'll see how the break affects him. But as you said, he's probably a horse that's going to be towards the back of the pack. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. I think a horse who's going to be a deep closer who drew very well is the number 3 Final Gambit because he's got speed horses all around him. So Luan Machado should have some space to sort of go backwards and actually let his horse gain his stride as he sort of lets those that are on either side of him go ahead and duke it out on the front end.
And coming into the Derby, it's nice to have a plan. You can, hope that your rider and your horse will go along with the plan, whatever it is. Is it going to be taking back, going to the lead, keeping a little wide? The connections of Owen Almighty have said they're going to maybe try to rate a little bit, but he's drawn way to the outside now. I don't know if that can really be a possibility. And as you were pointing out, David, if you look down to the inside, Citizen Bull, Neo Equus, Rodriguez, American Promise, all of them could be forwardly placed and want to be forwardly placed. So you have a group of horses down towards the inside and then one towards the extreme outside that they all feel like they have to be pretty close.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting taking stock of the pre-race quotes ahead of this draw. It felt like all of the connections of the speeds were saying, my horse doesn't need the lead. We can rate
sit a little bit, right?
Well, when a horse like Neo Equus draws post 2 and Citizen Bull draws post 1, I think those plans to potentially rate might go out the window because you have to be aggressive from an inside post or else you might get shuffled all the way back. We've seen that time and again in the Kentucky Derby. So I think we are going to see horses really come out firing from the inside. But those two speeds that are drawn in the second half of the starting gate. You mentioned Owen Almighty, but East Avenue as well, who's drawn alongside some closing types. At least they might have the option to look left, see how fast everyone else is going, and maybe not be so aggressive to get to the front end outright, get into a stalking position. But you do run the risk of getting hung wide into the turn if everyone's trying to go towards the front.
Yeah, one of the horses I think really got a bad just draw based on where it all stacks up is Rodriguez, just because you have American Promise right to his outside. I think American Promise is going to be putting some pressure on him. And then, as you pointed out, you have other horses like East Avenue and then Owen Almighty even farther out. So he's going to be right in the middle of all of the speeds there and probably have to work very, very hard. David, what do we think about the two horses that ran recently in Japan and where they've drawn? They're right next to each other, Admire Daytona, Luxor Cafe. Do you think the post position draw will impact them at all? I remember last year talking with you, there was some words about Forever Young and Kickback, and that didn't really seem like it was much of an issue because that horse has been pretty incredible at whatever they've thrown at him. Any thoughts on the horses who are running in Japan, and do you think it will impact them at all being in post 6 and 7?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the numbers 1, 2, 4, and 5 all having speed. Maybe the number 6 Admired Daytona could be in that conversation as well, based on the speed that he showed last time in the UAE Derby. He's got more versatility than that, but Christophe Lemaire can be an aggressive jockey in big fields like this. Luxor Cafe is the one I think you were referring to that might not love the kickback. We did see that a couple times early in his career in Japan, but sometimes these horses overcome those tendencies as they get a little more racing experience under their belt. So they probably would have preferred an outside starting gate for him to get a trip that's familiar to him, but we'll see. He's certainly going to get tested to see if he can handle kickback on Saturday, because you're likely going to get plenty of horses trying to come over in front of you from post 7.
And you were pointing out how it looks like from the post 11, you've got Flying Mohawk. He's going to come back out. He's the one to drop back. East Avenue will go, but then Publisher, Tistastic, Render Judgment, Coal Battle, Sandman, Sovereignty. That entire group of horses is probably going to want to kind of take back a little bit and be sort of mid-pack, at least off the pace a bit. Anything about that group that you want to mention, or any thoughts on a lot of those deeper closers?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just have to see which ones wind up in that 12th to 15th range and which ones are bringing up the rear, because the more horses you have to pass in the Kentucky Derby, the more racing luck you're going to need, having to avoid traffic, especially if they go quickly up front, avoiding some of those horses that are tiring around the far turn. So it's going to be interesting to see which ones are more aggressively ridden from the starting gate. But Gino, I think we'll talk a little bit more about that when we analyze the pace situation, which we're going to do a video for. You can also find on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel.
It's almost like you've done a few of these videos before. That's a little bit of a tease for our next video where we'll dive into the pace. David, what's so fun about this week? So many different races to play, not only the Kentucky Derby and the Kentucky Oaks. And make sure that you're checking in on the YouTube channel all throughout the week. We are going to have tons of video previews, pick 5 strategy videos. I know David and Mike have done a bunch of contender analysis videos already. So everything you need to get all prepared for Kentucky Oaks and Kentucky Derby Day. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel below. Thanks so much for watching us here, and make sure to tune into the pace analysis video so you can see how we think this thing will all set up.